Okay, cool. So I get to talk to you about, what is it? Hearing God and the ways he speaks. Is that right? Yes? Okay, so I'm going to do that backwards. We're going to go over the ways he speaks, and then we're going to get into hearing God. Does that sound good to you guys? So the first part is actually in your book. Yay! I know that's really exciting to me because normally I don't have anything in the book other than my name, so this is exciting. So the language of God, there's visions and dreams. How many of you are really familiar to the ways that God speaks? You can actually raise your hand. All right, cool. So the majority. So some of you, this may be a refresher. We're going to go ahead and go over it real quickly. Visions and dreams. There's Bible verses here. I'm not going to read those because I think that you guys can read it when you get home. And really, maybe that'll be a little bit more beneficial to you. So a vision of the mind is which the Lord projects images and pictures in our minds. I didn't write this. I actually pulled this from somewhere. There's dreams. They'll talk about different kinds of dreams. I'm just going to talk to you about what I know. And then when you get home, you just kind of read through this and break this down because this comes from some other source and they really investigated it. So I only know what I know, right? So visions, sometimes I've seen that. I think people get deceived because they think, oh, a vision is going to be something that I see just as good as I see Angela sitting there on the front row, and that's not the case. A lot of times you'll see a vision, it'll just be a glimpse. You'll just briefly have this thing in your brain, and you're like, oh, man, I just saw, I don't know. I could tell you one this morning that I saw, but it's a little creepy, so I'm not going to. And then there's dreams. Sometimes you have dreams. We all dream, right? For me, whenever I know it's a dream that God necessarily wants me to pay attention to, first of all, of course, I remember it the next morning. Also, not only do I remember it, but I can't very well quit remembering it. It's like all day that dream is in my brain. And so then at that point, if I know about lunchtime, this dream just doesn't seem to want to leave me, then even before then, usually with me, I'll start saying, okay, God, what do you want me to get from this dream? Sometimes I take it to other people because I'm like, I don't know why I had this dream. I'm just going to tell you this dream and then you help me along with this because I don't totally. And a lot of people will take dreams, and I know in here it says that colors are important and there's a lot of symbolisms in dreams. I'm not to that level yet. So whenever I have a dream, a lot of times if God doesn't say, oh, this is symbolic, then I'll just be like, okay, cool, so give me the practical stuff. I'm a very practical person, so that's the way I do it. But there's whole books that will tell you dream language. I'm not kidding here. And purple means something, and red means this, and if you dream that, it means this. And so if that is like when I'm talking to you about that, if you go, oh, man, I really want to know more about that, cool. Look on Amazon. I guarantee you're going to find a book. So I don't know that. I do know that there's people, I know that I think Holly, really looks more deeper into the dream interpretation. So if you get a dream that just won't leave you and you also aren't hearing anything from God, I would definitely recommend going to someone. Go to Holly. She's just one name that comes off the top of my head who knows that. So one thing you need to understand, not all dreams, sometimes a dream doesn't leave you. It's just because it was funny. So just ask God, you know what, is this dream something that I need to pay attention to? And just believe what he tells you. Don't get freaked out over it. If you have a bad dream and it's really messing with you, don't get freaked out. Go to your team leader, say, listen, I had this dream. Will you help me walk through it? And I think that's important. One thing I do whenever I go to bed, I always ask God to spend time with me. Whenever I give my sleep to God. So some nights I'll wake up and I'm like, that stinks, I didn't have a dream. Or, oh man, I woke up singing. Truthfully, last night before I went to bed, we were carving pumpkins. And we were listening to Pandora. And Jared had, I think, Journey radio pulled up. We listened to like oldie stuff. And truthfully, I woke up in the middle of the night with Hotel California in my brain. That doesn't normally happen with me. Normally it's a worship song. So when that happened to me, I was like, darn, darn. I was like, come on, God, let's think of a song. And so me and God at like 2 a.m. on the way back from the bathroom brought up a worship song. And so that's what I do. Maybe that's what you want to do. I just encourage you to make use of your time. You know, I think in the Bible it says that Solomon made an important decision. That was in his sleep. When he asked for wisdom, I haven't read it in a while, but I believe that was when he was sleeping. So I believe that you can make decisions in your sleep. I believe that you can have time with God. I believe your relationship with God can strengthen as you sleep. So I encourage you, maybe that's one step you take in the prophetic is you decide that your time at sleep, God can move in that. He can move in your mind as you sleep. So some people talk about God's voice as a still small voice. I know that it's just like, I think a lot of times people get tripped up. They don't think that they hear God because it's quiet to them. And they don't understand that God will speak to you. Sometimes you just know something. You know, sometimes you're like, I don't know that I heard this. I just know that this is right. And that's God speaking to you. Angels, you know, we've had some encounters with angels recently within the church. That's a pretty cool thing. At first, I was like, I don't know. How do we explain this? And then I was like, hey, it's all in the Bible, you know. They had encounters with angels. So if it's good enough for the Bible, it's good enough for me. There's tons of verses. You can look that up. Again, I think Pastor Ellen knows more about that. But I have experienced it. It's usually pretty cool. Our youth experience it. Our youth are just going really beyond anything I've been. They will, and this is not an exaggeration, they come up to me, and Faith and Esther have been like, Miss Melissa, I just had this encounter with an angel. And Esther will start talking into this vision she's had, and then Faith finishes it because they both had the same interaction. Isn't that crazy? They can describe stuff, and as Faith is describing it, Esther's like, oh yeah, I totally forgot about that. And they were both having the same vision, 2 separate places, not even talking about it. Isn't that the craziest thing you've ever heard? But that's the truth. That's what's going on. Trances, you know, I've never really done that. It says they're like visions. When we enter a trance, you're completely unaware of your surroundings. They take us out of our natural mind into God's. I don't know that I've done that. I know trance, people are like, woo, you know, that word in itself may kind of freak you out. And that's because I think the New Age community has kind of taken over that. And I think that sometimes, you know, whenever it comes to stuff like that, that doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means they're using it with the wrong source, you know. It's like when the source of God is the bottom line of everything and it's to glorify God. I believe that, you know, trances from God, good. Trances that don't lead you to God, not so much. You know, there's always a counterfeit. Make sure you're plugged into the right one. And I just believe that, you know, sometimes we're so fearful. Well, if you're fearful, then you're already walking in deception. Do you know that? Because God doesn't give you a spirit of fear. So I just encourage you to just pay attention to that. You know, don't discount it because it makes you creeped out. Just say, hey, God, I believe you're good. I believe you want relationship with me. What do you say about this? And then he'll confirm it. I mean, he really will. So trances, haven't had one, but I'm sure people in here have. Creation, God speaks to me in creation all the time. Through a sunset, the pretty color of the leaves right now. I mean, he just always speaks to me. Sometimes it's animals. I don't know. It's just like all the time. If you're open to that, I believe that that's totally an encounter with God you can have. And you can have some pretty super duper encounters with God just by driving down the road and paying attention to what you're driving by. You know, this is fall, guys. I mean, the color of the leaves, God did not. You know, there's a lady who doesn't go to this church anymore, but the whole way she got saved, she was an atheist. She's on a train going through somewhere in Europe. And all of a sudden, she looked out the window and she saw grass. Her favorite color was green. And she just marveled at the fact that there could be a color that was that gorgeous, that the grass was that gorgeous. And she was like, how in the world can I not believe that there's a God who made something so pretty that just blessed me in the way it did? Isn't that crazy? Creation brought her to salvation. That's ridiculous. So, but that is a way of God. He speaks through the scriptures. Of course, he speaks through the scriptures. I can guarantee you can read the same scripture for 30 days in a row, and I believe God can speak to you differently each day you read it, if you open yourself to it. So that's a big deal. Tongues, we speak in tongues. There's been a few times where people have gotten up and given a message in tongues and someone's had the interpretation. That does happen. Sometimes for me, whenever I'm praying, I will pray in tongues, and after that, I just know something. I have no idea what I just said, but I know in me obeying God and in me doing that, he said something. And it ministers to my heart. And it normally I feel stronger after I do that. I just feel more peaceful. And I don't really understand it. There's verses in the Bible. I guess they listed one. I didn't look it up. But there is a verse in the Bible about you praying and not understanding what you're praying. For me, sometimes that happens. Impressions, many people are, again, they're just like, man, I just feel this. Tyler, when Tyler was little, he was like, I don't think I hear from God. and I'm like, I think you really do. You just kind of just know something's right. And that's how he was hearing from God. He couldn't tell you, God just said this. What he could tell you is, I just feel like if I don't do that, then I missed God. And that was an impression that he got. Signs and wonders, miracles. Harvey's the miracle man. He can tell you all kinds of miracles. I've seen stuff. Sometimes simply me making it to church with 4 little kids was a miracle. It was a sign and a wonder that everybody made it to church. But for real, we have testimonies of my son Tyler is a huge Todd White. That's his name, right? Fan. And he watched a video, and Todd White just constantly, if people had back problems, he would just set them down. He was like, you know what? It's because one leg's shorter than the other. And so one night at youth, Tyler spoke, and he was like, you know what? I believe that's going to happen tonight. Sat a few people down. No joke. Their leg grew out. Isn't that ridiculous? Happened right here in this church. Mind reading. I'm not even going to explain that one because I don't know. I know it happens. I know my sister-in-law was at a ministry school in Florida many, many years ago, and this prophet came into the house, and he was so like under the influence of God. They were carrying him through the crowd, and she said when he came her way, she was like, I don't even want him to look at me, because she'd had the bad prophecy. She's seen the filth, of the calling out of the bad so many times. And the man just stopped and looked at her and said, don't think that way. And he just corrected her exactly what she had just thought, which was, oh man, I don't want him to know what's in me. And he said, don't worry about whether I know what's in you, because God sees the good. And he just totally read her mind, and it was crazy, and it really affected her. Circumstances, if you give your circumstances to God, he'll totally do that. Dance and prophetic songs, we're big on silks around here. Kelly Weatherly, she stomps. I don't know what she's doing, but I know when she does it, I believe spiritually speaking, things are shaking. And so she just has given that. Prophetic body checks, that's happened to me a few times. We're getting towards ministry time, and I'm like, oh, my ear hurts. And then I was like, that's very random. My ear hadn't been hurting all day. And then I was like, oh, I wonder if someone here is your left ear hurting? And sometimes that'll happen, it'll just be a sudden out of nowhere, ow, my knee hurts. Judy Burkaw came up Sunday and was like, Melissa, yesterday I was walking across the living room floor, my knee buckled. I thought, well, that's very random. My knee never buckles. And so the next day, right before church, it buckles again. She said, God, is this something for the church? He said, yes. She gave a word of knowledge. I believe that someone's left knee has problems. People come up, get prayer. So that's how that works. Spiritual happenings. Natural events. You know what? We've probably seen this happen wrong more than we've seen it right, but I believe it's true. A lot of times the people who gloom and doom people will point at natural events and tell you that God's wrath is coming. I'm just waiting for this to happen in the good. We have it going on right now. We had a lot of babies born. in this church and a lot of marriages over the past year. And I was like, man, I just believe that, that's a spiritual thing, that there's going to growth in the body, that, we're multiplying, that we're going new places. And then the little baby girls that were born, it's like they won't. And actually one of the boys, he doesn't lay his head down like most newborns. They're just constantly raising their neck up and just so strong. Their necks are so strong at a very young age. And I was like, I believe that's a spiritual thing. I believe that God's telling us we're raising strong children. And we really are. And so that's an example of a natural event. So that's just real quick. I'm trying to remember what time I started. I think I have 15 minutes. So I really wanted to save time for what we're going to do next. But let me tell you real quick. In the back of the book, there's an activation session. And I want to tell you about this because it's super duper cool. To me, it's like what it did was like you've got the big elephant of prophecy and it breaks it into bite-sized pieces. And I decided I wasn't going to just hand you this without me trying it out. So I took activation number 2, which says to start out each day by asking God to give you a list of things to look for during the day. And on Thursday, I did that. I was like, God, what do you want me to see during the day? And I believe that God said I would see a black VW bug. Is that what it's called? The little, Herbie cars. And I was like, black, huh? And I was at the church. All I was going to do was drive home. So, we're talking, if this stuff was going to happen, it was going to happen pretty quick. I also saw an American flag. I was like, okay, cool. And then the third thing is hilarious, Oscar Mayer wiener. I was like, what is this going to be? We don't have hot dogs at our house. So, but anyway, so on my way home, I noticed there's like 30 flags on my way home. Who ever noticed that? Even as I drove out of the church parking lot, I was like, I can see 3 flags from here. And it was crazy. Then I'm thinking, well, that one's taken care of. Then I'm going home, and then there is a black VW bug at one of the little strip malls on the way home. Hadn't seen one of those black in, I can't tell you when. They're usually not black. And so I was like, okay, God, that's awesome. So I go home. I'm looking. Honestly, at this point, I'm looking for a little boy dressed in a hot dog costume because it is Halloween. Or I'm looking for the Oscar Mayer wiener truck because I've seen that before. And so I was like, all right, God, we're doing good. Nothing. End up going on a walk with my daughter later that evening. And out of the blue, I was like, hey, watch out. There's a cranky little pug that lives there, and he just chased me earlier today. And so we're just goofing off about this dog, and we go halfway down the block, and Kirsten goes, Mom, do you know what dog I see every day? I said, what? She goes, that little wiener dog that's so overweight. And I was like, are you kidding me? And I was like, there's totally a conversation about a wiener dog. And I was like, okay, God, I'll take that. And then the next morning, I'm looking on my Instagram, and one of the youth had posted a picture. This is so random. At 10 o'clock the night before, I had gone to bed. They had posted a picture of a friend of theirs who came into work wearing a bunny onesie, and he was standing there with a hot dog hanging out of his mouth. Isn't that the craziest thing? So I did that. Now, let me tell you where I failed. The next day, which was Friday, I got up. I said, okay, God, show me what you want to show me. And it was like I saw an elephant. I saw musical notes. And I saw a man who looked like Mr. Miyagi, which is hilarious because I call Tim Mr. Miyagi. And didn't see Tim all day. Okay, so I was going to get groceries. That was the only time I was going to be out of the house, right? So I get in Walmart, I start doing my deal, and then I get home, and I was like, oh, God told me what I was looking for today, and I totally forgot to pay attention. And I was like, man, God, I'm so sorry. And I was like super duper bummed out because we were on an assignment, but I got so busy with the things that I had to do that I forgot to look for the people he told me to look for. So that's a positive, and that's where I messed up. So I encourage you to take these activations. I believe God is going to affirm you. He's going to show you that you're hearing from him, and you're going to have fun. I'm telling you, it was fun. This morning, I did not ask for him stuff, but I'm going to in a bit. So those are the activations that are in the back. Now I'm going to talk to you about just actually hearing from God. I believe that most of the prophetic boils down to your intimacy with God. I believe that if you get into the notion that you want to hear from God on Sundays and you don't practice through the week, then that's a problem. You know, whenever I conversate with people out of relationship. I don't do it just because it's my job. And so I believe that that's the bottom line with hearing from God. I believe everything you hear from God is going to come from your intimacy with God. It's going to come from those times you choose to spend with him, the time you pay attention to him, the little nudges from the Holy Spirit. He tugs on you through the day. He'll tug on you and go, pay attention to this, or he'll tug on you. Sometimes, you know, if I'm really, really busy, at the end of the day, I'm like, man, I just feel like I missed the Holy Spirit because I didn't pay attention to him. And I believe that that's where God wants to take you. He wants you to be in such an intimate relationship with him that you constantly feel him, that you constantly hear him. He made you for relationship. Everything you do comes from the foundation of relationship. That's how you do it well. He didn't just form a lot of workers. He got super duper down in the dirt and he made you. He molded you. And he put different personalities in you. He put different loves and passions in you because he wanted you then to take those and to have a relationship with him. And then his love comes into you. And once his love comes into you, then everything else flows out. It's not a job. Whenever you hear from God out of the overflow of your relationship with him. So as you go through your day, don't even worry about what he has for everybody else for a little bit of time. Just worry about acknowledging your love for him and resting in his love for you. And I believe once you do that, you're going to be hearing God before you even know it. And you're going to be so confident in it. I believe that we can be finely tuned instruments for intimate communication with God. Isn't that fine? We can be communing with God all the time. And it's because he loves us. He didn't love us to keep us at a distance. He loved us because he wanted to get down and get in our lives and get messy with us. Isn't that fun? That's the creator he is. He isn't up there just orchestrating things. He's up there saying, hey, let's have a relationship. Hey, I want to spend time with you. Hey, today, don't do anything for anyone else. Today, it's me and you, baby. That's what he says. Isn't that fine? And that's the God that we're talking about. You know, in the Bible, it talks about Moses and the burning bush. And you know, it says when Moses saw it, he turned his attention to it. And that's a lot of times where we mess up with hearing God. We don't turn our attention to it. We see something that's rare, we feel something that's rare, and we don't take time to turn our attention to it. And I think that that's something that you need to be trained in. I think that that's something that God wants you to walk in. In the Bible, my favorite verse is John 10:27. My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. For years, not years, that sounds so dramatic, probably a year, that's something that I mumbled all the time. That is so fun. Angela's ringtone is like a, I don't know, all of a sudden I went chips and salsa. But that verse for like a year, I would pray that verse. And I was like, God, I want to hear I prayed this so many times, I thought that this is how the verse went. I thought the verse went, my sheep know my voice and they will not turn to another. I thought that's what it said, but that's because I prayed it for a year. That's how I prayed it. For a year, I said, God, I want to be so in tune to your voice that I will not turn to another. I want to know your whisper. I don't want to wait for the shout. And that's what I prayed just for so long. Truthfully, I looked it up in 4 versions and then figured out I must have changed that verse. That's what it was for me. When I prayed it, I was like, you know what, God? I want to know your voice so strongly that I don't go anywhere else. I don't want you to just speak to me so other people will be blessed. I know that you speak to me because I'm me, you know? It's because who I am. And so that's what hearing God is. People who open themselves up to experience the creative communication of God are the ones that will experience it. If you're set in the fact that you're only going to hear God when you read the Bible, you're probably only going to hear from God when you read the Bible. But if you say, you know what, God, I don't care if you speak to me in a donkey. then you may hear from a donkey one day. And that's where I am. Sometimes I'm like, hey, I am the donkey that God is speaking to you through right now. You may not like me, but guess what? God gave me a word for you. And so I just encourage you, open yourself up.